thank you for sharing yours. One night, about just over a decade ago, I sat in my apartment, scared to see anyone, never mind talk to anyone, so I knew as soon as I opened my mouth, I was going to start to cry uncontrollably. Just an hour before I had finished a typical day of work, and then I found myself in an extremely dark place, one that unfortunately was similar to ones I had had before. The thoughts that were running through my mind would have scared anyone who cared for me, because I was tired, and I just wanted everything I was going through to end. I knew that if I didn't do something about the situation that was going to help me have it end positively and not what I was envisioning, that I needed to act. So I drove myself to Lionsgate Hospital, and that was because I didn't have anybody that I trusted to do it. In reality, I had never given anyone the chance to earn that trust. Asking for help just wasn't something I did. When I got to the hospital and saw the first nurse, talked to her, and the uncontrollable crying ensued. I found myself in a room with a therapist and a doctor who both agreed that I should check myself into the hospital. I looked at him and said, I can't do that. In 2 days, I have to take 30 athletes to Victoria to compete in a swim meet. If I don't, I'm going to get fired. They looked at me and said, what do you want us to do for you? I really didn't have an answer. And since, as long as I can remember, I've had phases of depression that look like that. Up until about 7 years ago, I hid that from as many people as I possibly could. Why? The main reason was because I had a job I loved and absolutely lived for. Starting at the age of 16, I started coaching swimmers and triathletes. The job ended up being a full-time career for close to 20 years. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but parents judge those who work with their kids pretty harshly. And I thought to myself, they knew that I had mental health challenges. They really want their kids to be swimming with me. And then in the athletic world, I mean, admitting to mental weakness, that's a cardinal sin. And it wasn't an option for me. I was supposed to be an example for the athletes I worked with, and really, if they had a weak leader, why would they follow? And these were assumptions and really misconceptions I had. I was looking at myself with disgrace and disapproval. And literally, that is the definition of stigma. So what did I not want to admit? As I was diagnosed and I'm challenged with bipolar disorder. On top of those periods of depression, I've gone through a lot of periods of hypomania in my life. Like the second year that I was in Douglas College as a full-time student, I was earning a high GPA. I was a full-time assistant head coach of a swim team, the co-founder, assistant director of another. I worked part-time at a rock climbing gym, climbed 4 nights a week, and did it all off of 3 hours of sleep, and had undying energy. Of course, it had been unsustainable. And eventually I needed more sleep. Energy reserves dried out. At that point, I started to feel like an absolute fraud. I became paranoid and inevitably depressed. The depressive period that I described earlier lasted at least 3 months. And 3 weeks after that initial visit to the hospital, I actually ended up in a psychiatric care facility that somehow I was able to hide from the rest of the world. Now, these challenges have affected my social life in a lot of ways. I have some very close friends, but for the longest time, I never felt that I could be honest with them, or really myself. And I was scared to death about being in an intimate relationship. I mean, who would want to date someone with bipolar? Who would get on that roller coaster ride voluntarily? You know, doing the online dating thing was interesting. A lot of the females have things on their profiles that are the same. None of them, excuse me, they all want someone who's emotionally stable. And none of them say, contact me if you're on long-term disability. Yeah, 6 things I can't live without. A lot of the things that women would put down, the ocean, the mountains, my family, my friends, my passport, my iPhone. Never figured out why my profile didn't get the traction I thought it should. 6 things I can't live without. Modafinil, Wellbutrin, Lamotrigine, my psychiatrist, my support group. In all honesty though, I met a great girl on Plenty of Fish. She was pretty incredible. She had done some amazing climbs all over the world. She was one of the only female industrial firefighters in northern Alberta. When I came to grips with my diagnosis, which was many years after my diagnosis, I made something what I call the third date rule. Because the third date is kind of where you're like, this thing might have some legs, right? It might get a little bit serious. And so the rule was that I had to admit what I was challenged with and let the cards fall where they may. With this girl, it was my first time I had actually officially gotten to the third date. So we were at a restaurant one night, and I don't know, it felt like an hour that it took me stumbling over my own words and giving different disclaimers before I got it out of my mouth. I have bipolar 2. She looked at me and said, "That's it? After all that, I thought you were going to admit to being an axe murderer or something." Seeing someone accept my reality and not judge me for it, it was huge. With the challenges I've had with my emotional stability or instability, I think I've achieved some pretty cool things. I became the youngest level 4 coach in the country. I've had over 100 articles published in different magazines and periodicals. I got to assist with some of the best swimmers in the world. I've gotten time to spend with some of the greatest athletes in the world, like Michael Phelps, and also lived and worked with the Czech junior hockey team for 3 weeks in 2005. I now own my own business. I speak about swimming-specific yoga across the world. I teach yoga to multiple Olympians. I still publish my writing. I'm a mental health advocate, and I have a strong relationship with an absolutely incredible woman. It's real. So how did I get here? I mean, literally here telling you guys these stories. I had to change careers. I wanted for the longest time to be a mental health advocate, and I just couldn't do it in the circumstances I was in. In 2012, I had to go on a medical leave from my work. Now that was for my emotional challenges, but it was also because I was in a car accident in 2010, had a neck injury that eventually necessitated spinal surgery. During that time, I really took a look at my life and saw that I was really not happy doing what I was doing. So I decided to follow another passion, which was yoga. 5 months after my spinal surgery, I headed off to Costa Rica, took my teacher training. 2 days into that training, we were asked to really think about, explore, and journal about why we were there. At the end of that period, we were told we could share those experiences, but we weren't required to. So after that class, I wasn't the only male in the teacher training, but now I was the only person who didn't share why they were there as well. I was there to learn more about something that helped me in my journey with my own mental health. And I was there to have the opportunity to be able to share that practice with those who had similar challenges. Fear is what stopped me from sharing that motivation. A few days later, though, after getting to know my classmates a little better, I opened up about why I was there, and what I was going through, and how they reacted really was a game changer for me, and how I've lived my life since and the opportunities I've had. They accepted the words non-judgmentally, and they had curiosity and showed huge compassion. That is just one example of how showing simple support for someone can really change your lives. Now, showing support doesn't need to be complex. It's actually pretty simple. You don't have to be overt. You don't have to try too hard. You don't have to give advice. All you need to do is listen non-judgmentally and show empathy. That's all it is. It is that simple. I want to share a story with you about a support group meeting I was at one time that I think also gives you a couple important aspects around people that are challenged with mental health and mental wellness. So it's the first time at this support group, and I literally just went off. I was frustrated, and it was because I was doing everything right. I was getting my physical fitness in. I was addressing my nutrition. I was getting the proper amount of sleep. I was seeing my psychiatrist. I was seeing my therapist. I was journaling, and I was taking my medication without fail. And I was still ending up in the places I was. I was sick of fighting. After the meeting, another one of the members of the support group came up to me and said, "I'm not going to tell you I understand what you're going through. Because whenever anyone says that to me, I feel like punching them in the face. And I'd rather leave this conversation without a broken nose." But you talked a lot about fighting. For me, when I stopped fighting is when things actually got better. Now, this isn't the same for everyone, but at least for me, please never tell me you understand what I'm going through, because you don't. And if I like you even a little bit, I don't want you to understand what I'm going through. It really freaking sucks. And a lot of times I've done talks like this, and it's with other people. And a lot of times they describe their symptoms in very, very similar ways. But I can't understand what they're going through just because we have similar symptoms. I had two loving parents. Weren't perfect, but they provided me with a caring and safe environment to grow up in. Just because one of the women I speak with talks about her dark places the same way as I do, doesn't mean I understand. My life experience does not include physical, psychological, and sexual abuse. I can't understand what someone else is going through. The other gem, actually, I forgot a quote I was going to say. So Ali Brosh, does anybody know that author, Ali Brosh? Okay, you should all read Ali Brosh. Okay, she's got an amazing blog. She's got a book that's called Hyperbole and a Half. So Ali Brosh talks about her depression in this way when it comes to people offering advice and understanding. That's the most frustrating thing about depression. It isn't always something you can fight back against with hope. It isn't even something. It's nothing. You can't combat it. You can't fill it up. You can't cover it up. It's just there, pulling the meaning out of everything. That being the case, all the hopeful, proactive solutions start to sound completely insane compared to the scope of the problem. It would be like having a bunch of dead fish, but everyone around you won't acknowledge that they're dead. They try to help you look for the fish or figure out why they disappeared. The problem might not even have a solution, but you aren't necessarily looking for solutions. You're maybe just looking for someone to say, "Sorry how dead your fish are," or "Wow, those fish are super dead. I still like you though." Now the other gem from the story was stop fighting. It sounds counterintuitive, but I can't tell you how much things changed when I took that advice to heart. Now what does it mean to stop fighting? It doesn't mean to stop doing things that create wellness. It doesn't mean to give up hope, and it doesn't mean stop believing that things will change. What it means is trying to fight your biology with willpower does absolutely nothing for your emotional wellness. Trust me, I'm a stubborn SOB, and if I could, I would. But in my experience, all it does is create frustration, erode confidence, and destroy hope. Going to go back to Ali Brosh. Trying to use willpower to overcome the apathetic sort of sadness that accompanies depression is like a man with no arms trying to punch themselves until their hands grow back. There's a fundamental piece of the plan missing, and it isn't going to work. Read Ali Brosh. So let's come back to why you guys are all here, which is to make the workplace a better environment for those with mental health challenges. I've been very, very, very lucky with the people that I've worked for that have found out about my challenges, or those that I have felt safe enough to tell about my challenges. I've been extremely, extremely supportive. They'll ask me questions, they'll check in with me, but they won't treat me like a special case. It's just like someone with a physical illness. They don't want to be seen as weak. They don't want to always be seen as they need special attention and help. I never wanted that either. I don't want your pity. You don't need to talk to me in a different way than you would everyone else. I believe people should be treated as individuals, and in that need to employ compassion and empathy. But that compassion and empathy is not mutually exclusive from having expectations and consequences. So I'm going to say that again because I think it's important. Having compassion and empathy does not mean, or it's not mutually exclusive from having expectations of people and having consequences, which we all have in our workplace. Seth Godin says that there's three things people really want, and that's safety, respect, and connection. So I ask you, how can you create an environment in your workplace where people can feel safe, respected, and connected? And that's for everyone, whether they have mental health challenges or not. I'm going to leave you with one last quote. And this one is about Eeyore. One awesome thing about Eeyore is that even though he is basically clinically depressed, he still gets invited to participate in all the adventures and shenanigans with all of his friends. And they never expect him to pretend to feel happy. They just love him anyways. And they never leave him behind or ask him to change. Again, I need to give the mic back to you.
Thanks, Jeff.